Today, I'll be showing you how to create a GitHub repository, connect that repository to VS Code, print hello world to the terminal, and then push the changes you've made on over to the GitHub repo that we had you create previously. Now, in order to complete this tutorial, I am assuming that you have installed Python and the required extensions within VS Code to use Python. And if you haven't, go ahead and do that now and come on back. But first things first is we're actually going to create a new folder. And I'm going to call this folder personal projects. You can call it whatever you want. Now, once we've done that, we're going to head on over to a web browser, and you'll need an account for this, but we're going to go to github.com. I've already created my account. The process is fairly simple. But once you have created that account, you're going to see this new button. Go ahead and click on that new button. That's going to create a repository, essentially a place where we can store and make changes to code, but externally. And so the repo name I'll be using today is Hello World Tutorial. All right, and it looks like that is an okay name for us to have. I'm also going to add a README file, which we'll get to a little later. And I wouldn't worry too much about this git ignore currently. As you start to code more and deal with GitHub more, you'll come across that and it'll make more sense. So we're creating a repository here, and there we go. We have our repository. Now, we can't really do much with this because if I were to code something in VS Code, I wouldn't be able to see it here quite yet. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to click on this green code button. That's going to pull up a URL. Go ahead and copy that URL to your clipboard. And from there, we're actually going to open up VS Code. And you can see that I was already working on this a little earlier. So I'm going to close my VS Code here real quick. There we go. I'm going to open up a new window. And right here on our homepage, we've got this clone Git repository. Now, this isn't just for GitHub, but that is the means we're using today. So go ahead and click on that button and paste that URL here. It's going to ask you to choose a location for this repository. Now, we created that folder called personal projects. So go ahead and find that folder, click into that folder and select repository location. This will create a folder that is connected to that GitHub repo. And once you've done that, you'll see this pop up, or maybe you won't. If you do, go ahead and click open. If you don't, open that file you just created. Now we can see here, we've got that git ignore that I created and the README. Up here, we're going to click new file. Conventions with Python are to not have your file names capitalized. So I'm going to name this file Hello World. And .py just tells VS Code that we're going to be using Python to write our program. All right, and this is just it's the most famous and simple coding tutorial. Not that mine's the most famous by any means, but the ability to get your terminal to say hello world. So we're going to use a built-in function called print that Python gives us. We create parentheses right after that, and we want to create a string, which is essentially just a list of characters that Python will then print. In order to create a string, we will create our quotations inside of those parentheses and simply write hello world. And you can add whatever else you want to that. And then over here, we have our run button, and we've got it here. Our terminal has said hello world to us, showing that artificial intelligence is real and of humanity is nigh. No, I'm just kidding. But even though we've made all of these changes, if we were to go to GitHub, which we can do really quick, let's refresh. I'm still not seeing those changes that we made. So what we do here is we save all of the work that we've done. So we just hit save a couple of times, however many times you want to do it really. And we're going to click this little plus sign, which is staging our changes. So we're going to stage the change. And I go here to this little menu bar, and I'm going to click commit staged and type in a little message. All right, so you want, don't put too much, but you want it to be enough for someone reading your repository to understand what that commit is about. Hit enter, and we are going to push those changes. And once we've pushed those changes, we are going to take a look here, and there we are. We now have our code up here. It says hello world. It's told us, it tells us who the contributor is. And the cool thing is you can invite people into specific repos, and a whole group of people, 10, 12, 15, 20, an entire company's worth of collaborators can all make changes to this code on their local devices without affecting the repository's code unless those changes are approved. And so that is our tutorial for the day. And thanks for sticking with me.